Well, firstly, thank you for speaking to us. I definitely am taking away a lot from this Sunday speaker. I actually have two questions. My first question is, a lot of low-income working mothers, one of the main jobs that they tend to get is in food service, whether in fast food or as like a waitress at Denny's. And that's because it's one of the few jobs any woman can get without a college education. How do we, obviously our education system needs to step up, but how do we as a community reach out to push girls to go for a higher education? My second question is kind of a little backstory. Back when the Trump Care was first being proposed, I go to an organization called STAR, which helps mentally ill people who are SMI. And one of the statistics with the mentally ill is that they're more likely to be arrested than almost any other segment of the population, regardless of race or gender. Basically my question there is, how do we address that, and because I don't know any statistics off the top of my head about gender, but how does that statistic go against women, and how does that affect women who do have severe mental illness?
Both good questions. So the first one, so I don't have the statistic of how many women are attending college and the universities, but I do believe it's been growing, and I think like there's easy ways. So for starting at a young age and educating girls their options, including college, including universities, is one way to start. Also for women who are returning to college, providing some kind of childcare or alternative class schedule. There's ways to make college camp, not repealing the Title IX rules that Betsy DeVos just repealed from the Obama administration. Yeah, so financial aid, so I would say some of that. And I'm really glad you brought up service industry jobs. So my first job out of college, my first job was working in a city council election. My second job was actually working at a hotel, and the hotel had a union. And because my hotel had a union, I had health care I could afford. I had full-time hours that couldn't just be cut. I couldn't be forced into part-time labor when I wanted to work full-time. I made a livable wage. And I pretty much, for the most part, had a set schedule. In our contract, we had a thing called seniority, so there were a few people who got first dibs, but it was something I could plan my life around. And I don't think it's either or. Either girls and women are in the service sector industry, or they go to college and then they have more options. I think it's a both and. Because when I worked at the hotel, I was working with mothers, I was working with fathers, I was working with students, people who had recently graduated from college. It was incredibly diverse. And for the students working part-time, why aren't those jobs paying more so that they can actually support themselves when they're going to school? And for the family, for the fathers and the mothers, why aren't those jobs middle-class jobs? They used to be. The New York Times a couple of years ago had an amazing article that talked about when an industry switches and goes from being male-dominated to female-dominated, the pay plummets. Because the fact of the matter is, in this country, and I would say much of the world, but in this country, women's work is just simply valued less. If a woman can do it, we probably don't have to pay that much because it can't be that hard. And so, to your point, why aren't these middle-class jobs? The CEOs are making a ton of money, right? These industries are making millions, if not billions of dollars in profit, each company, each hotel. I'm using the hotel as an example, but it's the same for the food service workers or the janitorial workers at the airport and the universities. And we need to keep demanding that it is. And it's either going to help someone who's trying to go to college, or it's going to help someone who is trying to raise their family so maybe their kids can have better options in the future. Your second question, and I almost wonder if this book has it, because this book talks about the gender impact on disabilities. And SMI, I would classify as a disability.
Yep.
So SMI, serious mental illness, this country, I mean, we, especially under Reagan, just continued to roll back services and protections, and the solution to people with mental illness is, let's just throw them on the streets. And then people with mental illness, I mean, it's unfortunate, there was an individual who was just shot and killed by the police in Mesa. Just, I think, a couple nights ago. Like, and he had a gun, like he was just waving a gun around, but.
Autistic man who was.
Autistic, there.
This one is a different one, this is a Buckeye.
Oh,
he
yeah.
was practicing his calming technique that he was taught, and the officer violently attacked him.
So this guy, no, I remember. I don't know if this guy had a mental illness, but he was a war veteran. So statistically looking at it, PTSD is closely linked to going to war. I'm trying to find, because they did talk about disabilities, and I'm trying to find the stats. So let me find the stats and open it up to another person, and then when I find it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but thank you for the thoughtful questions.